All right. So again, thanks for joining us. Very good to have you here this evening. Every spring we do car care clinics in Lake County, and because of COVID-19, we were unable to do it this year. So in working with a bunch of the libraries, we decided to host one collaborative car care clinic, and we're going to record it so that we could, for those folks that couldn't be here, so that we could share it for them. If you do have specific questions, please go ahead and put those in the comment in the event, and we will answer those for you. When we do these in person, we do have them very interactive. So a big thank you to 4 libraries that wanted to work on this together. We have the Mentor Public Library, the Wickliffe Public Library, Wilby Eastlake, and Twinsburg Public Libraries. We still do have our fall car care clinics scheduled, so you'll see information about those, and we are working on a summer one for Mentor. It's going to be more of a hands-on in the parking lot, how to do certain things on your cars. So tonight's objectives, to better understand vehicle maintenance and car care, especially coming out of a somewhat mild winter, but what you have to have ready on your car. Based on the pandemic and the stay-at-home mandate, we're going to review what to do if your car has been sitting, hasn't been driving, and then we're going to answer your questions about cars and car repair. We're also going to talk a little bit about dashboard warning lights, seasonal inspections, what you should be aware of that your mechanics can be looking at. Hopefully this summer we'll be able to take some road trip inspections. We're going to talk about maintenance schedules, the internet, is it good or bad for car information, and then also a different website and application called My Carfax. That's pretty good for keeping track of things on your car. So a normal car care clinic, we meet about this time at a library on a gorgeous day like today in Northern Ohio. We're going to gather everyone up, go out into the parking lot, pop the hood, check tire pressures, look underneath the hood and things like that. Of course, we can't do that tonight, but I'll do my best to explain some of the things that we'll look at during one of these car care clinics. But first, I want to talk a little bit about what to do if your car has been sitting. We get a lot of calls at the shop about dead batteries and certain smells inside the car and things like that. So if you find yourself having to get back to work or start to get back life to normal in the coming days and your car doesn't feel right, doesn't start right, doesn't smell right, best to have your trusted mechanic take a look at it. At the very least, you ought to be starting your car once a week. Let it idle for 10, 15 minutes. If possible, take it for a drive. So I tell our clients here in Wickliffe, drive it out to Headlands Beach, catch a sunset if you're comfortable driving at night. And you'll see there's a picture I found in TripAdvisor of a sunset at Headlands Beach in Mentor, Ohio. What you want to be able to do is get the car up to higher RPM for a good drive. Again, 15, 20-mile drive would be great to recharge the battery. Although today's batteries are a little bit better, they still don't like to be sitting and they like to be used. Definitely check for rodents. I'm going to show you some pictures in a little bit about what we found in cars and what we can find in cars. Best thing to keep rodents out of your car. I always joke at these events, get a cat, but you could also stick dryer sheets. Stick them in your glove box, stick them underneath the hood in places where they won't touch the engine or the belt or anything like that. It's very common for rodents to get into houses or into your cars, chew wiring, chew up your cabin air filter, build a nest, store some food. So don't be embarrassed, but do what you can to keep those out. Also, it's a good idea to look for leaks. So when you do move your car, take a look where your car was sitting. Are there any stains from fluid that were dripping? Seals do dry out over time. And so if you do see any leaks, you'd want to have your mechanic look at it. And when a car's not driven, rust will develop on the brakes. So when you maybe take it out for that first drive and you go to use your brakes and stop, you might get a little pulsation in the steering wheel. It's going to go like that. You might hear a little thump, thump, thump. Don't sweat it. Drive it for a few miles. If it doesn't go away, then you might want to have it looked at. But that rust will knock itself off and things hopefully will return to normal. All right. So next up, one of the questions that we get quite a bit as well is how to clean your interior surfaces. So with all the concern about the spreading of germs, even if you're not taking your car in to get it fixed, maybe you're just shuffling family around, things like that. What can you do to keep the inside of your car as clean as possible? So number one, wipe down the surfaces. Hot soapy water actually is a great choice. You can certainly use Clorox wipes. You can use spray cleaners, and you'll see here there's a picture of what's called a microfiber towel. That's great for cleaning. You can certainly use a paper towel. Paper towels will most likely leave some lint behind, but the EPA actually has on their website a whole I think it's 10 or 12 pages of things that are approved to kill the COVID-19 virus. But we see that hot soapy water is a great solution to do that. Believe it or not, COVID-19 cannot survive above 140 degrees. So if you leave your car in the hot sun, that could get very close to that temperature. But if you run your heater on hot for quite a while, it's might not get all the way up to 140, but it's going to get close, and that's going to help kill that too. You will see that there are some detailing companies and some automotive repair facilities that are starting to run some specials on disinfecting. Most of that is genuine good stuff. Read the fine print, just make sure what it is. Nothing's going to be guaranteed to kill anything. But there's a process to wipe down all surfaces. There's a way that we can inject a disinfectant into your vent system and suck it through with that hot heat. And also there's something called an ozone machine that mostly gets rid of odors, but it does disinfect. I shouldn't use the word disinfect. It does clean things up a little bit, and there are some air purifiers as well. There's also a fogging option that some places can do for you. Again, a detail shop where they're going to fog all the hard surfaces as well as your seats with a mist. It's got to sit for about 20 minutes as it dries and evaporates, and it does kill most bacteria. But just be careful when you're driving. If you sneeze, clean it up. Get in the habit of wiping down surfaces as well. Of course, if you ever did have any questions about that, give us a call or give your own mechanic a call, and I'm sure they'll be happy to walk you through what needs to be done. If you do have any concerns with your vehicle, schedule some time with your mechanic to have it looked at. Ask for a full look over. Ask them what it might need. Some of that might be from sitting. Some of it might not be, just catch-up maintenance and things like that. Your mechanic will help put a plan in place, help you prioritize what's most important. If you are lucky enough to be going back to work, thanks, Greg Vandersloss, for the shout out there. If you are lucky enough to be going back to work and you have the opportunity to work in a safe environment, you want to make sure your car is going to be safe to get you there as well. So we always put safety first, and then catch-up maintenance and anything else that needs to be done. Your mechanic can help prioritize that. And then any damage from sitting needs to be looked at during the inspection. Did the rodents eat any wires? We see it time and time again, rodents building nests. For some reason, they like the taste of rubber. They will start to chew through some wires. That could keep your car from starting. It could put a check engine light on. It could do some damage. Better to catch it sooner than later. So what does a seasonal inspection look like? So this would be the things that we would look at, or your regular mechanic would look at, heading into the spring and summer timeframe. This would also be if you said, hey, my car's been sitting for 3 weeks. I got to get up and running, get back to work. Can you give it a full look over? All the things on the right side of the screen are what are going to be looked at. Things like a road test, checking all your lights and wiper blades, your filters, your battery belts, hoses, spark plugs, those sort of things. Of course, all your fluid as well. Looking at your tires. We're going to talk a little bit more about checking tires in a minute. And then everything underneath the car, from the brakes, the steering, suspension, and the exhaust as well. Specifically in the summer, there's going to be special attention put on your air conditioning system. Does it have the right amount of refrigerant? Does it work on all settings? Does it come out of all the vents, up and down? Does it cool the cabin down like it should? Is it making any weird noises, or does it have any weird smells? When your air conditioning system leaks inside the car, or if you have your head underneath the hood, you get a strong industrial smell. It smells almost like, I call it like a hospital smell. Very, very clean. We're also going to check your coolant and fluid. So coolant is what we used to call antifreeze. We want to make sure that it's the right color, it's the right level, and there's no leaks. Believe it or not, there's all the colors of the rainbow of engine coolant now. A couple different color versions of orange and blue and red. There's, of course, the traditional green. There's a couple golds. There's a universal yellow. We want to make sure your car has the correct coolant in it, and it's going to be good for keeping the car from overheating. Mechanics will check tires this time of year for their clients as well. What we're looking for there, do you have the right amount of tread for safe driving? If we get some heavy rains, make sure you won't hydroplane. Are the tires too old or dry rotted? The charging system test, very important now when cars have been sitting. Is the battery taking a charge? Can the battery survive some strain during maybe running everything in the car? Some DVD players on a trip, you got the air conditioning, you got the cell phone charging, you got the GPS running. Is the battery strong enough to handle all that? And is the alternator charging the battery properly? And brake steering suspension. Is anything worn, loose, or broken? Plain and simple, when the car was made, all those things were nice and tight. If they are loosening up, you need to know about that so you can make a decision about investing in the vehicle. Maintenance catch-up. We'll talk a little bit about maintenance in a minute. Specifically, your manufacturer has recommended intervals for doing certain things. That could be for replacing fluids, inspecting fluids, torquing certain bolts, changing out certain components. The reason they do that is they know from the companies that help make those parts when they're about ready to wear out. And you want to catch those beforehand. And then the wipers, very important. 6 to 12 months is the average age of a wiper now. My best advice on wipers while you're listening, every time you wash your car, just wipe the rubber. It's going to help them last a lot longer. It gets all the debris, pollen, anything that's sitting on there, gets it off and helps them last a lot longer. And then also on a seasonal inspection this time of year, we're looking at alignment. Even though we're coming off a mild winter here in Cleveland, there's still potholes, there's still big ruts, there's lots of construction going on, steel plates and roads. Has anything changed on your suspension that's going to cause your car not to handle properly or lead to irregular tire wear? You don't want that. You spend a lot of money investing in tires, and you want to make sure they last as long as possible. So why inspect? So I have a picture here, 2 pictures. On the right, that is underneath there is called a cabin air filter. That's underneath your dashboard. Most cars have them these days. They started off in the early 2000s. And believe it or not, that is what you think it is. It is a rat's nest. I remember this car when it came in. It was a first-time client of ours. And the unfortunate part is wherever she was taking it before was not checking this on a regular basis, or else she would have known about that. But the worst part is every time they were running their heater or air conditioning, their family was breathing that. So cabin air filter is generally about once a year. If you drive in dusty conditions or live in a high pollen area, or you park underneath a tree that likes to drop things, you're going to change that more regularly. But if you don't drive in those areas, you might be able to get 1.5 years out of your cabin air filter. And then on the left side of the screen, you'll see circled a control arm bushing that is actually popped out of that. These very common design on a lot of cars, that bushing is designed to be pressed down. So if you can see the lip there, that should be level with the top of the metal component there. And what happens is the rubber just dry rots as it hits some rough roads and some potholes and things like that. It does loosen up. What would happen is if that bushing did eventually pop out, there's a bolt that holds it in. So now that bolt, instead of riding in maybe a 1/2 inch hole, is now riding in a 2.5 inch hole, and you're going to lose control. You're not going to be able to have that steering wheel where you need it. And the control arm, most commonly found on the lower front suspension of vehicles. Some cars have rear control arms, but this one in this example is on the front. So why inspect these things? Why have your mechanic look at it? Nobody likes surprises. You want to make sure that the air you're breathing in the car is good and that nothing's going to fall off and leave you stranded, or worse yet, cause an accident or hurt anybody. Here's an example of I showed you the inspection sheet earlier. The industry is moving to what's called a digital inspection. So rather than the technician having a clipboard and pen, they actually have a tablet in the back. And the technician goes through. This was a particular brake inspection that we had done. The client asked for a full brake inspection, 2013 Honda Civic. So what the technician was able to do was to measure the brake pads and then take a look at the rotors as well. Since the client couldn't be here, you're able to text that to them or email it to them, and then they can look at it. We also share videos through this as well. Super cool. So here's actually a picture that was in that inspection. This was the rear brakes on this Honda. And if you can see on there, you see a rust, an area of rust, an area of shiny, and then another area of rust. And what that shows us, and it looks like I could probably move the cursor over it. So this is the rust area. This is the shiny area. And now we're back to a rust area. So what's happening is right back here where my cursor is, this is part of the caliper, and underneath here is the brake pad. In this area before that I was talking about, it's called the rotor. So when you push the brake pedal, the caliper squeezes the pads against the rotor, and it's designed to slow the car down. You let go of the pedal and it releases. Well, what's happening here is the pad is not coming in contact with the areas where we have rust. So the braking ability on this particular wheel, and I'm going to guess the other side was probably very similar, is very much diminished. So where maybe it would take 100 feet to stop from 60, maybe now it's going to take 120 feet to make that stop. It is something that drivers sometimes get used to, but in a panic stop, you might not have that time. At the end of the day, it's a car owner's decision whether or not to make the investment in changing those components out, but at least they know about them and they can make a decision on whether or not they want to get it fixed or take a different path. So when you are around your vehicle, maybe on the weekend or even when you're pumping gas or done pumping gas, there's a few quick things you can do. You can check your tire pressures. You can check your fluid levels. I always like to recommend folks walk around their car once a week, if not more, but at least once a week. Take a look at the outside of the vehicle. Do you have any exterior trim or body pieces that are damaged? There's a lot of folks that they get in and out of that driver's door all week long, never walk around the other side, only to find out that somebody in a parking lot had dinged them pretty well. There's nothing you could do about it, but at least you would know about it. It's also good to walk around your car and check your lights. Just make sure all the lights are working. The only thing you'd need a partner for is checking those brake lights in the back. But you should always be checking to make sure all your lights will work, including your license plate lights. In many states, including Ohio, if you have a burned out light, that gives an officer permission to pull you over to let you know about that. While we appreciate the men and women in blue, we certainly don't want to have our days interrupted by having to talk to them and maybe getting a light fix. So make sure when you're getting your car serviced, they do check all those lights. The quick check too, your wiper blades. Best way to check your wiper blades, when it rains, are they working? If they're not, it's time for new wiper blades. If they're clearing just fine, keep on running them. And then the quick check too, as you're driving around, do you have any noises or rattles that are new that you need to have checked out? The one thing I'll show you a picture of here is checking your engine oil. Highlighted in red on the left of the page, that's your dipstick. Just about every manufacturer car, the dipstick is going to be yellow for oil, and it's going to be orange, sometimes red for transmission fluid. And then on the right-hand side of the page here, you'll see this is what the end of the dipstick looks like. This car has great clean oil in it, and then you'll see these two dots. So this is, not every dipstick has these two dots. Some have hash marks here in the middle. But as long as you're good here, between here, you're considered safe. Most places would say, let's just get it right to the middle to make sure you're good. This one's a little bit full, but it's not going to hurt anything. Now, if this was really full all the way up to here, we might want to drain a little bit out of it. Too much oil can actually work its way into the parts of the engine it's not supposed to be. Could cause you some issues or a check engine light. Fluid conditions. This is something that your mechanic's going to check and something that should be checked on a regular basis. In the center of the screen here, we have green antifreeze. This is brand new, clean green antifreeze. Believe it or not, on the left, that is antifreeze that we pulled out of a vehicle that had never been changed. The reason it's that color is because that's rust that's building up inside of the radiator, the heater core, and inside the engine. Be very difficult to get all of that out of the vehicle without multiple fluid exchanges, which, if I remember correctly, we had to do here. So antifreeze or coolant does a few things. One, it keeps your engine from freezing in the winter. So this coolant is designed depending upon how it's mixed, could protect you to 0 degrees, -10 below zero, -25. It's all how it's mixed with water. And that's something that should be checked. It also keeps your car from overheating in the summer, in the warm months, but it also fights corrosion and rust inside your vehicle. So even though it looks good, if it's 5 years old, 4 years old, 7 years old, it should be changed, because although it looks good, what breaks down is its ability to fight rust. And you don't want to have a surprise of having to buy lots of major components for your vehicle when a simple fluid exchange would have helped. All right. And then here on the right-hand side, that is not sweet and sour sauce from a Chinese restaurant. That's actually nice, clean transmission fluid. And the reason it's there was to show a client their transmission fluid on top versus the new stuff we put in. This was a good example of, it was just broken down. Transmission fluid, just like your engine oil, breaks down. It gets hot. It's running through clutches and discs inside the transmission that help it move. It goes through rubber lines. So it does break down. It's something that needs to be changed on a somewhat regular basis. There are some examples of where a manufacturer says it does not need to be changed, but in most cases, it does get serviced on a regular interval. Good advice is to look at your owner's manual. So if you have any questions about your vehicle, what does a certain dashboard light mean? Or when is a service interval for my car? You can certainly find it online, but in your glove box should be one of these books. Every new car comes with one. And it's what I call the field guide for your vehicle. So it's good stuff. So yep, like I said, it's got some. What's interesting too is safety items. We did a Facebook Live I think it was last week, where we showed, how to read the owner's manual, where you find your spare tire, where you find your tools, where do you put the thing, where do you put the jack, so that you could change a tire on the side of the road. So there's things like that in there as well. If you can't find your scheduled maintenance in your owner's manual, there might be a supplemental book, or you can jump onto your manufacturer's website, and it'll ask you for your year, make, and model, and it'll tell you what needs to be done at certain mileages. You can also ask your mechanic. Many shops like ours, we subscribe to a few different databases that contain that sort of information direct from the manufacturer. All right. Look at all those lights that could pop up in your dashboard. So we're going to go through these kind of quickly. The first one that we see most often is a tire light. This is a huge source of frustration for folks. Tire pressure monitoring system. If it's steady, yeah, you more than likely have a low tire. Just needs to be set up to the proper pressure. If you have one that's on and then off, so let's say that you go out and start the car tomorrow morning and it's on, you get to work or your destination and it's off, good chance it's just a little bit low on air. What happens when you drive the tire, when you drive the car, the tire, the air inside expands a little bit. And so you might start off at 28 PSI. By the time you got to where you are was 30 PSI, and 30 PSI is where you're supposed to be. So the car thinks everything's good. If you have a check engine light that's flashing, that needs some attention. It flashes for a few different reasons. One, the sensor itself is bad. Number two is it has a communication issue with another component on the car. So the sensor might be good, but the receiver or one of the modules that controls the system might be bad. So there are some investigations that can be done to figure out exactly what's going on. A couple other notes. Just because you have this light on the car, you should still be in a regular habit of checking your tire pressures. It's a good habit just to have that in your weekly to-do list. The other thing too, if you put any sort of slime or tire slime in there because you have a flat tire, that in most cases, not all, but most, will ruin a TPMS sensor. And those sensors can run anywhere from $100 to $200 when they get replaced. So save yourself a little bit of money. Call your roadside assistance to put the spare on for you, or you put the spare on. If your car does not have a spare tire, you'll have to call a tow company and get you into a garage and have it looked at. So while we're talking about tires, every car, most of them have it. Every car has this sort of sticker on it. Most of them have it right where the driver's door is. You open it up, boom, it's right there. So let's walk through this sticker real quickly. This particular car, it's a van. It seats 7 people. 2 people would sit in the front, 5 in the rear. This is the tire size, both for the front and the rear. This is the tire it calls for. It also has a load and speed rating. This is very important. when you need to get replacement tires from your vehicle, you should choose one that has at least this load and speed rating or better. Reason being is you get one that's not quite up to the par here. You load this thing up with 7 people. You went ahead and added a few more pounds of luggage. That might not be able to handle it, and you could have some issues. This also tells you what size of spare tire. So this vehicle did have a spare tire, and this is that. Here we can find the PSI. So this, both front and rear take 35 PSI, and your spare tire takes 35 PSI. Believe it or not, some vehicles will have different PSIs between front and rear, and the spare might even have a different PSI. A lot of donut spares have a higher PSI. Pay very special attention to that. What you see in this picture here, rim leak. See all those bubbles right here? So if you live in a corrosive environment, I'm not talking politically, I'm talking road salt and brine and things like that, that can eat away between where the tire and the rim meet. So these alloy rims have a coating on it that breaks down over time. There's a special process that we do when we take a rim off to clean and reseal it so that this is less likely to come back. You can also see a wheel weight right here. That could also be a common area where they leak, because this could interrupt the way that everything sits. So if you have a tire that you're constantly adding air to once or twice a week, or maybe even once every 2 weeks, you could very well have a rim seal. This one on the right's a little bit worse, and we use the old tried and true soap and water to find the leak. We're happy to do that for you, as well as your mechanic would be if you have an issue. And also on tires, on the left here, this is a gauge that we use to measure tires. So remember Abe, the old penny test, Abe Lincoln? Oh, thank you for watching, Chris Hallam. So that is 2/32 of an inch. So Abe's head would be measuring right in here if that was it. These tires are in decent shape. 7/32 of tread life. Most new tires are going to come anywhere from 9 all the way up to here, up to 14. When you start to get down in this range of 4 to 6, that's where we start to let our clients know that tires are in their future. Keep an eye out for rebates or sales. The best way for you to get the most out of your tires is to rotate them on a very regular basis. It used to be every other oil change. Now, with synthetic oil changes where you're running about 5,000 or 6,000 miles, you may want to have your tires rotated every oil change. When the car comes in, it'll be measured, the tires will be measured, and you could be advised whether or not it's time to rotate them. And then here on the right, this is a no-no. So this is a very unfortunate situation. This is the inner edge. This is the inside of a rim of a tire. And you'll see that bubble there. What happened is this client actually picked up 2 used tires and said, "Can you guys please install these on my vehicle?" We said, "Sure, we'll be happy to do that. Do you know where they came from? What's the quality?" And she wasn't really sure, but she had bought them, I think it was off of Craigslist, 2 tires. Well, we mounted and balanced them, and look at this bubble. That's unsafe to be driven on. So we had to put her spare on, and while she found another tire. This is a buyer beware. Believe it or not, the summer of last year, the Ohio legislature passed a bill that made it a little bit more difficult for folks to sell used tires. It increased what constitutes a bad used tire. So my adage is always, there's a reason. There's always a reason the tire was taken off the car. Plain and simple. There's a reason that person paid to have that tire removed and a new one installed. And Chris Hallam asked the best time to buy tires. There are, I always like to say, the spring and the fall. Reason being is that's when the tire manufacturers offer the best rebates. So Chris, thanks for that question. They all tend to run the rebates the same. And because of COVID-19, a lot of folks June 1st are starting another rebate season. So if you do need tires, and you can wait a month or a couple of weeks, I guess now, Cooper's coming out with it. I believe Firestone and Bridgestone and Goodyear still has their rebate running, I believe, right now. And then a lot of shops also will put sales on top of that. So we fit that or we fall into that category as well. So as those rebates come, we try to sweeten the deal a little bit for clients that need tires. So keep an eye out on websites and Facebooks and things like that for the sales. The next light that we talked about, this is not a magic genie. You don't rub this and get 3 wishes. This is telling you that there's a problem with the car's engine oil pressure for a few reasons. One, oil level could be low. You could have low oil pressure. That could be because of a bad bearings in the lower end of the engine. You could have a clog in the oiling system. You could have a weak oil pressure, oil pump, or you could actually have a bad gauge as well. I keep meaning to change that. You shouldn't check your oil level. You could 2 times a week. I like to say, check it every other fill up. So maybe twice a month, just to make sure it's there. It's not uncommon for cars to burn a little bit of oil between oil changes. As the car increases in mileage, you could go through a quart between oil changes. Some cars actually can burn more, and the manufacturers will tell you that's normal. If you do feel that your car is going through a bunch of oil, there are some tests that we can run, but we also work with our clients to help monitor that over a period of time to make sure that we're actually addressing a true problem. So if you don't see leaks on the ground, but you're having to add oil on a regular basis, you could be burning some oil. And there are some fixes, some inexpensive fixes, and other times it could mean that there's some internal engine damage. Charging system test, or the charging system. So when this light is on, that's actually a silhouette of a battery, but that's actually telling you that there's a problem with the alternator. So if this light comes on, get it to a mechanic as quickly as possible, because right there, it's probably running off only the battery or just a little bit of the alternator in the battery, and you might not be able to restart the car, or you might die on the side of the road. This is indicating that there's an alternator issue or maybe an issue with the wiring in the system. Batteries on average now last about 3 to 5 years. We had one a couple years ago where we saw it was 11 years old, if you can believe it. So they certainly got their money out of that one. And like I talked about earlier, longer drives are best to charge. And another question from Chris Hallam: newer cars have a gauge that give you the percentage of oil life left. What percentage should we schedule an oil change? Great question. We tell folks when that hits 15 to 20%, schedule it within a week. So you're going to be somewhere between 10 and 15% on that oil life. It's a great point, Chris. Your car's computer is super smart. So it knows the ambient air temperature. It knows your coolant temperature. It knows your it knows how long the car's idled, how fast it's been driven, how hard it's been driven. And it takes all of that into account to predict your oil life percentage. So you're always going to use the gauge of the sticker in the window as a little bit of a gauge, but that oil life percentage is a great indicator of when to come. So we tell people 15 to 20%, give us a call, let's get it in. And then we'll get that oil changed out, reset that meter for you, and get you back on the road. 2 brake lights you might see on your dashboard. The top one, anti-lock braking system. This is going to come on when the ABS is not working. Your brakes will still work, but the ABS won't work. And this is more than likely related to an electrical or module issue. Could be a wheel speed sensor, which is electrical. That's something that measures the speed of each wheel on the vehicle and tells the car how to engage anti-lock brakes. The bottom light indicator is telling you that there's a loss of fluid or pressure in your system. So you have a leaking brake line or a leaking master cylinder, or you could just be low on brake fluid. If you are low on brake fluid, that's probably an indication that either have a leak or the brakes are starting to wear. As the brake pads get thinner and the caliper pistons come out further, something backfills that space, and that's brake fluid. So you should have your brakes checked ASAP. You don't want to get in a situation where your brakes are not working. Check engine light. This is the big one. So your car has lots of monitors on it. It's watching, and sensors, and it's watching so many different components on the vehicle, how it's running, and it's going to report back to you if it sees something it does not like. So why it comes on? It comes on to tell you that there's a problem with something, and it's outside of what the manufacturer wants to see. It's measuring, for example, it measures how much air is coming into the engine. It's measuring the type of air in the exhaust. Is there more fuel or more oxygen inside the exhaust? It could be, you have sensors measuring oil pressure and coolant temperature. And the way that today's cars are being made, everything needs to be within a certain parameter, or there could be problems. There could be fuel economy problems. There could be drivability problems, or even starting problems. So it's not good if the light's on. You should have it looked at, and it might not be expensive to fix. It could be something as simple as a little broken hose, a frayed wire. Maybe a rodent got up and chewed a wire that was going to one of the many valves on the emissions and evaporative system. It You could roll into you could roll into a shop like ours or even a auto parts store and have a quick read done at no cost. The analogy I like to use there is that quick read is going to give you a code. That code is like a zip code. So if I said I wanted to get to Wickliffe City Hall and somebody said, well, what's the zip code there? I'd tell them 44092. They're not going to be able to find where City Hall is. They're going to need to ask some more questions, do some more research to get up the Ridge Road to find City Hall. So that's where diagnostics comes in. That's where a mechanic is going to do some investigation and some research into what exactly is causing that code to turn on. Because while that code may say that you have a bad oxygen sensor, you might not. You might have something further up in the fuel management system that's making the car think there's a problem with the oxygen sensor. Or there could be a frayed wire somewhere that needs to be chased. So that's why investing and having somebody look at it is a great idea. But again, don't be scared. It might not be expensive. If the check engine light is flashing, stop the vehicle. Don't drive it anymore. The reason it's flashing is it's telling you there is a severe misfire. A misfire is where either fuel and spark aren't happening at the correct time, or one isn't happening. Raw fuel is going down into your exhaust system, into your catalytic converter. And if there's anything you should know about catalytic converters, they are important for cleaning your exhaust, and they are expensive. And that's the whole rash when you watch the news about them being cut and stolen, is because they can get good money for them. And the new ones cost even more. So you don't want to have to replace that. So if it is flashing, stop, get it towed to your mechanic and have it looked at. Also, although the state of Ohio is not doing e-checks currently, a check engine light would keep you from getting a pass certificate for your e-check if the state of Ohio does go back to having an e-check. So the other thing too is if you let an engine light go without having it looked at, and a secondary problem, or worse yet, even a third problem comes behind it, you're not going to know about it, and you could be doing some damage. So, an ounce of prevention is certainly worth it. All right. So, kind of in summary on that, dashboard lights do mean that there's an issue. You should have something looked at. Cars are not supposed to make noises, so if they do, it is indicating something's wrong. Have it looked at. Hopefully, we'll be able to take some road trips this summer, whether they're even just day trips in the state or be able to travel out of state and enjoy a vacation. It's always good to have your vehicle inspected before you take it on a road test. A couple of things we talked about that we would be looking at, a mechanic would be looking at on there. You just want to make sure that you're not going to have the kind of fun vacation this mom and her two kids are having here on the side of the road, not the memories you want. So a road trip inspection is going to have a little bit more focus on things that could leave you stranded, extremely worn out belt, or maybe hoses that are ready to leak, maybe a tire that's really bald or has a lump in it that's going to give you an uncomfortable or unsafe ride. It's not a crystal ball, but it does give you a little bit of peace of mind. So definitely have it looked at, not the day before you leave, probably about a week ahead of your trip or 2 weeks, just so if you do have to make an investment in getting it fixed, you can either make a decision about a different vehicle to take or go ahead and round up the funds to get that fixed. Let's talk about maintenance schedules for a minute. So every vehicle requires some sort of maintenance. Your vehicle is made up of many, many different parts. Many of those parts move. They are either lubricated on a regular basis or lubricated once when they were built, like a ball joint or tie rod end. Many of them are lubricated once, and that's supposed to be lubricated for life. But your manufacturer came up with these maintenance intervals to help keep your car running well for you. You can find these online. Your mechanic can be able to give you them, and you can find them in your owner's manual or a supplement to your owner's manual. It'll tell you what to do and when to do it. The philosophy of most automotive repair facilities is, let's just say your car comes in at 60,000 miles, and it's calling for a review of a bunch of items, and it's also calling for a replacement of a bunch of items. We're going to look at what the manufacturer says to do, but then we're also going to look at everything on the vehicle. And if something is in great shape, it doesn't have to be replaced, or it was changed out of sequence, there's no sense to do it again if it's not worn or broken. Anything to save you money should be looked at when looking at your vehicle. But if it is worn, or we agree, or the mechanic agrees with the OE maintenance schedule that it is due, they're going to have a conversation with you and let you know that it's time to change out this particular fluid. Here's the benefit of doing it. Here's the risk if you don't. And then, you make the decision of that. We get into conversations with a lot of our clients that maybe they can't take care of all the recommended maintenance. A lot of cars have big maintenance intervals at 90,000 or 120,000 or 100,000. And that could be a lot of money. So what we'll do is we'll put together a sort of a maintenance program. So maybe at the next oil change, you'll take care of 2 of the fluid exchanges. And then the oil change after that, you'll take care of the filter that was dirty. And that's more of a plan to help you still keep your car running well, but help you manage expenses as well. So if you're ever presented with a large maintenance estimate, you might want to ask what could be done now and what can wait. Here's a picture of some of what we see. You can see here on the left side of the screen, something was building a nest inside this vehicle. That red post is actually a remote battery post for this particular vehicle. But we see so many weird things, and animals love to get wherever they can and hide their food, hide their nests, things like that. The center picture here is that little hole there. This is a wire that we cut out of a car, and then we were doing diagnostics on the vehicle. And what we found is at some point, something had poked that wire. You can see a little bit of green in the middle there. That actually is corrosion. So the copper wire in there corroded and broke and separated from itself, putting the car's check engine light on. Something like that is why you have diagnostics done, so that you're not chasing or replacing parts that don't need to be replaced. So, something like that, you cut out the bad wire, put a new wire, seal it up so hopefully it won't happen again, retest, and make sure it's good to go. And then on the right side, just another example of a nest inside of a cabin air filter. Definitely a warm place for that rodent. All right. Next up, Chris Hallam asks, I see cars with brake lights not working. Is there any way the car indicates this problem to you? Not really, Chris. A lot of European cars, and we do see it on some Lexus models as well, but it's mostly the European cars and high-end Asian cars that have a light out indicator. We hear stories all the time. People stop in and say, hey, I was at a light and somebody honked and asked me to put my window down, and they told me I had a burnt out brake light. The other way is, a police officer politely advises you that you have a burned out light. But that would be it. So used car inspections. This is something that I am very, it breaks my heart when somebody brings us a car that they just bought without having it looked at, and it's a lemon. It's a used car that was somebody's problem that they passed on to somebody else. It could be a car that was rebuilt and not rebuilt properly. It could be in really bad shape. It might look great on the outside and underside is totally rusted with issues. Any used car that you're looking at, you should have it inspected. There are some very quick, simple checks a mechanic can do, and there's some very detailed checks. Also, you want to get into the car's computer during this. You want to make sure that they didn't reset the check engine light. Believe it or not, they could have a check engine light on that they reset. 2 short test drives might not come back on. It comes on that weekend when you're driving a little bit longer. You want to show it to some friends, and that pops on. That could be an issue. What most mechanics are going to look for is the car structurally safe, or is it rotted out to the point where it can't be fixed or welded? Is there anything loose, worn, or damaged? Has the car been maintained? What can we tell by looking at it has been fixed or repaired or tried to be covered up? This helps you, the buyer, understand that you're getting a good, safe car. If we did find some stuff that needs to be done, we let you know about that. And then you can go and negotiate with the seller saying it needs all brakes all the way around. And that gives you a little bit of bargaining power. I do recommend paying for the Carfax report. I think they're $60, maybe $45. It's well worth it to investigate whether or not the car has had any big issues, how many owners it's had, how it's been serviced, and the states it's been registered in. Very, very valuable information. My thoughts on used cars. There are lots of used cars out there. I don't think anyone viewing this is going to go out and buy an extremely rare Ferrari. And even if you were, you should still have it inspected. What I mean by that is, if you are looking at a car, and your gut feeling tells you something's not right with this car, something's not right with this deal, something's not right with this seller, walk away. There's other cars out there. You will find that car. But if your gut's telling you something's not quite right, it's probably not right. So well worth it. Most shops will juggle stuff to get a client in to take a look at that. And we have a couple used car lots around us. We get calls from out of state, people saying, hey, if I had the car brought over to you, I'll pay you over the phone. Can you give it a good look over? And that's where the digital inspection really comes in handy. So we can text or email those pictures to a potential buyer out of state and let them know the good, the bad, and the ugly. All right. And then here's just a little bit more on the pre-purchase inspection. That's what most folks refer to them as, pre-purchase inspection. Any little thing that could be touched on the car should. If you do, when you have it at the mechanic, you should get walked out, is what I'm trying to say. So once their inspection has been complete, before the car is put back on the ground, you ought to have a quick conversation around the car about anything you need to know about, good and bad, just so you know before you make the purchase. And then we're getting to the tail end here, the internet. Abraham Lincoln said, don't believe everything you read on the internet just because there's a picture with a quote next to it. And that usually gets some laughs in the in-person clinics. The internet's a great place to learn, to research. So it's good for seeing service pages so you can get your recommended maintenance. It's good for seeing if your car has a recall or an extended warranty. General car info as you are researching a potential car to buy. There's some good videos out there too. Some really cool stuff people are doing with cars. Every year, twice a year, we have to reset our radio clocks, right, in our car. You could read your owner's manual, or you could watch a quick video on it. And things like Mr. Hallam had asked earlier about the percentage of oil reset. Those are good videos to watch if you end up doing your own oil change. You want to reset that. Every car is a little bit different. And then there's also some good forum information. And what a forum is, that's a group of like-minded people that share information. Just about every car brand, manufacturer, model has some sort of forum. Even for everyday cars, Toyota Camrys, Honda Accords, there are forums. People jump in there and they share ideas and they share information. For the most part, those are good. The bad part of internet is poor do-it-yourself videos. There are so many YouTube videos out there where they leave out such important parts. They leave folks stranded in their garages, having to get the car towed because they followed some bad advice. They got in over their heads, things like that. There's some good DIY videos out there, don't get me wrong. But there are some folks who have put some shoddy videos out there that could get some people in problems. Cheap parts. You could find some good parts on the internet. You could find some very cheap parts. And we've heard a couple stories from folks that have bought parts online, had them installed elsewhere, only to have those parts fail, and then had very little recourse because they bought them from an eBay buyer or some e-commerce store that really wasn't a top-level retailer. Buyer beware on stuff like that. And then I will say too, as good as forums are, there are some issues when checking out the forums. Sometimes people will post problems they're having with their vehicles, and the people posting are thousands of miles away without an opportunity to look at the car, and they're having people check things and put them in circles and maybe put them down the wrong path. So while forums can be good, there could be some issues or some bad information in there as well. And I believe that should take us to website and apps. This is by far my favorite. I used to have a couple in this section of the presentation, and this has by far become my favorite application to have folks use. This particular, don't confuse this with the Carfax Vehicle History Report. This is the mycarfax.com website, and you could have an application on your phone or tablet that allows you to track your vehicle's maintenance. It will remind you when it thinks you're due for an oil change. It will tell you when it's time to get your plates renewed. It'll have all of your service history. So whether you take it to a dealer or take it to a shop like ours or your regular mechanic, most shops are reporting the Carfax. So you can see that. You can also put your own things in. Let's say, for example, you put wiper blades on your car. You want to record that so you had a history of when it was done. You can put that in. Should you have a recall, you get a notification there as well. This is, I think it's great. It's a really nice application. The one slide that kind of got buried in the front is it's advice on working with a mechanic. As a matter of fact, I might as well just pull it up. It got out of sorts here, but I'm going to pull this up. Sometimes I get asked, Bill, what should I look for when I'm looking for a mechanic or a shop? So first off, I always tell folks, if you have a mechanic that you like and you trust, don't leave them unless they give you a reason to leave them. You shouldn't leave unless they gave you a reason to leave. Find a shop that you know, like, and trust. Are they talking your language? Are they understanding what's important to you? Are they understanding how your driving habits are, what your budget is, what your long-term plans are with the car? Those are all things that your mechanic should know. So if you have someone you have a great relationship with, don't leave them. Stick with them. It's like the family doctor. It does take 2 visits to confirm whether or not it's a good shop or bad shop. So believe it or not, it takes 4 visits to find your favorite restaurant. It takes 2 visits to find your favorite mechanic. So if you had a good visit with that mechanic, get another one and then confirm that it's good. If that first visit was, you might want to give them a second chance and see if that second visit is, or is it spectacular, or is it horrible, and then you can help make a decision. Like I said, stick with that shop. The worst thing you could do is jump around. What ends up happening is, why was this done? Why was that done? This should be done next. That could be done that. 2 mechanics are going to look at the car in a very similar way, but the mechanic that knows you, knows your budget, knows your driving, knows your family, is going to be able to make better recommendations, help you spend your money more wisely, and create a better, lasting, long-term relationship. And the other thing is, ask questions. You'll get an estimate for some work, or you'll get an inspection. Ask some questions about that. Why this? Why that? What's the warranty with that? What if I don't do it? Can I do it in 2 pieces or 1? Don't be afraid to ask questions. People that want to know more about their cars, that impresses us. It's something that's the type of relationship we want. We want to have a good dialogue with our clients, so they understand why they have to make that investment, why that has to be fixed, or why they don't have to fix a certain thing. We do get, from time to time, we get asked for second opinions, and it's important that that person asking for the second opinion gets our full, honest assessment of why something is required. We're agreeing with the first opinion, or why we're disagreeing with that first opinion. So don't be afraid to ask lots of questions. And Karen asked a question. Yes, Karen, your history is all in there. So if you just go to mycarfax.com, and then you can create a login, or you can connect your Facebook login and make it work. If you have any issues with that, the next time you come in, we can handle that. So that is the end of the presentation. That's like a record, because normally we end up going like an hour and a half because we have a lot of questions at the libraries. But if you have any questions, put them in the Facebook Live comments. We'll leave it open for another minute. I do appreciate everyone joining. Looks like we had a bunch of people jumping in and out throughout the session. This is recorded. We're going to share it with the libraries so they can post it on their pages as well. So I'll give it just a second to see if there's anybody that, I should be specific, car-related questions. All right, well, I guess that's it. I don't see any questions coming in. I want to thank everybody for joining. I also want to thank the Mentor Public Library, Wickliffe Public Library, Willoughby Eastlake Public Library, and Twinsburg Public Library. Keep an eye out for some of these events in person, hopefully this fall, and maybe one with Mentor over the summer that's more hands-on, how to change a tire and do some roadside stuff where you can actually get your hands on. If you have any questions at all, I'd be more than happy. Just give Radar and Wickliffe, shoot us a Facebook message, or give us the shop a call. Be happy to answer any questions that you have. And it looks like Karen threw a question in. Is there any difference between regular and premium gas? Yes. So premium gas and regular gas have different octane levels. That's actually the power of the gas. Your car's owner's manual is going to tell you what type of fuel your car requires. Some actually put it on the gas cap. It'll say run 93 octane, run 91 octane, run 89, 87. 87 is the most common. That's going to be the low grade. But whatever your car calls for, that's how it was engineered to run, and that's what you should run. Some premium gases also have additional additives and fuel cleaners and things like that. It does cost a little bit more, but if your car is going to run better, have better fuel economy, and less issues, it's worth the investment. While we're talking about fuel, when you pull up to a pump now, if you go to a Sheetz, your head's going to spin because there's a yellow handle and a blue handle and a green handle and a black handle. There are all kinds, there's biodiesel and there's E85, E15. This may contain 10%. Don't try and experiment with, can this work? I can save 3 cents a gallon. If your car calls for 87, put 87 in. If it calls for 91, put 91 in. And another point on fuel, it's a good idea if you have a regular routine to use the same gas station over and over again. If you do travel throughout the community for healthcare or business reasons, and you have to use different gas stations, use a name brand gas station whenever possible. But if you stick with the regular gas station, that's your best bet for a consistent fuel experience. And believe it or not, we haven't seen it in probably 2 or 3 years, but there was times when there was some bad gas delivered in Cleveland, and some folks were having fuel issues. We had to drain the fuel tank, put new fuel in, and their car started to run great again. And then if you remember 2 years ago or 3 years ago, there was the diesel mix-up where one gas station had diesel pumped into the wrong tank, and it ended up in some cars' fuel tanks before it was noticed. So believe it or not, you can't stick the diesel pump into your car if your car's regular, and vice versa. They won't fit. So no issues there. But good question, Karen. Thanks very much. So if there are not any other questions, I'm going to let everybody go, and we'll probably post this video on our Facebook page too towards the end of the week. So again, everyone have a great night. Looks like the sun's still out. Hope you get a chance to get outside, enjoy, and everyone stay healthy. Thanks again.